FinTechs redesigned the face of the BFSI sector. FinTech partnership empowered the BFSI companies from onboarding customers to instant payments. But the next question is, what's next? How can FinTech scale up the BFSI ecosystem? This panel will discuss how FinTechs are deploying innovative technologies. We have with us Amol Dete, ET BFSI editor. Sir, please take it ahead.
Welcome each one of you. I won't say it's a warm welcome because it's already sunny outside. But it's a pleasure to have all of you here on the panel with me. And I'm glad to share with you that we have more than 700 delegates already registered for the BFSI Virtual Summit. In fact, this is going to be the India's first BFSI Virtual Summit. And the theme for our today's panel discussion is FinTechs, scaling up BFSI. We all are aware and the whole world has recognized the value of India's FinTechs. The journey started with wallets, moved on to payments, and then it finally, I won't say stopped, but rising towards lending space. Most of the FinTechs are operating in credit space. So we'll try to unlock today in the era of lockdown, how the FinTechs are doing, what is the next generation technology that they are adopting, and what next for FinTechs here. So now the question is, how do they scale up the entire BFSI sector going ahead? But before that, I would like to introduce you to the best panel that I have here with me. My first panelist here is Harshil Mathur, the co-founder and CEO of Razorpay. Harshil, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
My second panelist is Saurabh Tiwari, the founder and CEO of Zfin. Saurabh, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
My another panelist is Anand Kumar Bajaj, MD and CEO of PayNearby. Anand, welcome on the show.
Thank you, Amol.
I have also with me Xavier Kurian, Director, Solutions and Alliances, Dell Technologies. Xavier, welcome on the show.
Good to be here.
And my last panelist is Samir Maheshwari, CFO, Pine Labs. Samir, welcome on the show.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Great. How are you dealing with the lockdown? What is the big lesson that you have learned so far? Harshil, I would like to take your views on the same question to start with.
Thanks for inviting. I think, of course, lockdown has been an unprecedented time for everyone. We started as an organization, we started working from home a couple of weeks before the lockdown itself because of the fear spreading in the Bangalore's community. And we wanted to ensure that our employees feel safe while working. Also, at the same time, we also wanted to prep up. So I think that helped a lot because the preparation for working from home, the BCP drills helped a lot. People were able to adopt to it much more quickly. So internally as well, we faced minimal struggles in working from home. But the challenges, of course, of the economic situation have been a lot. Overall, business has declined significantly, almost about 25 to 30%. Most customers right now are, because we serve businesses and mostly small to medium businesses, they are mostly in survival mode right now. They're all trying to just ensure that the ends meet and they're able to wait through this crisis. So we tried to figure out what is the best thing that we could do to help them. So we launched a couple of things like same-day settlement, helping businesses who are providing essential services by helping them raise awareness, providing them features. We created a dedicated help desk for such businesses who are operating essential services during lockdown. And we saw a really good traction on it. I think it is definitely a challenging situation for everyone. The only thing that has helped us internally as well externally come together in this is by ensuring that people understand what lockdown means. People internally also have a very strong view on how the business is affected due to this situation, and take up enough amount of time and interest to ensure that they support each other as well as our business during these tough times.
Right, Harshil, thank you so much for that opening remarks. Anand, I will come to you, your opening remarks.
Reminds me of Tom Peters' Reimagine. Everything is up for grab and anything that existed does not exist. The share economy is gone all of a sudden. Looks like why was the office there? And we have got acclimatized to work from home, collaboration at the highest peak, productivity is the most fantastic. Yes, there are challenges that not everyone is able to do equal amount of work from home. And we do miss the whiteboards, but that's where the innovation is coming up and there are good tools being identified. So everything is up for change and people are collaborating and realizing, even for example, the office rents. We were to add one more office during this calamity time, and we had to hold that office back because it is just not required. The landlords are willing to put rents to lower numbers. There are innovations coming from the property consultants saying, can we get you offices at half? And we are saying, why do we need it? So a lot of things are for change. And the payment system specifically, we feel redeemed that this is what the day we had built the ecosystem for. And we feel happy that we future-proofed India with Aadhaar and with UPI. So the entire DBT benefit is being relayed on our soldiers, business correspondents that we have across the country. 8 lakh of us are able to work hand in hand with government and reach out even 500 rupee to 2000 rupee to individuals. Putting money in the bank is not important alone. Giving it in the hands of the people is most certainly important, and which is what we have been able to do. We feel happy in these times. But just like the doctors don't like malaria, we don't like these spikes. The normal business is okay, not at the cost of the humanity.
Right, Anand, very likely you put it. Saurabh, your views, please.
Yeah, just introduce myself a bit because Zifin is quite newer to the game, right? So we are the tech services arm of the policybazaar.com companies, and we have been largely dealing into providing services to the insurance, banking, as well as Policybazaar and paisabazaar.com. And the moment this entire situation came, I think one of the biggest challenges that we had, we wanted to transfer all my people who are actually calling out from Policybazaar and paisabazaar.com to work from home. And we have been thinking about it from some time, but it was largely a challenge. I think this particular situation has forced us to get into that shape, and all 13,000 agents have gone working from home. And the solution that we built over years has given us the scale that we wanted. While we were trying to help Policybazaar and paisabazaar.com to get working from home from a contact center perspective, we have also started working with insurance and banking and lending organizations to have these solutions in place as well, where they can operate from work from home. And as we know, the new normal is always going to have a bit of component of working from home, no matter what you say. So the solution has to cater to both the needs, work from office as well as work from home. And that's what we have been working towards. Our non-ops teams have been largely unaffected because we were also working from home earlier as well. So this has been just a tough time from the perspective where people don't know when they need to log off from their work. They've been constantly working Saturdays, Sundays, and all the days. I think the productivity has gone up. That's what it appears. Or maybe the efficiency has gone down. So whatever you say. That's where we are right now.
Very important thoughts, Saurabh. Thank you so much. And I will move to Xavier. Xavier, your thoughts?
So Amol, Dell as an organization has been very pro work from home, and we've been working from home for a very long time. So most of our employees were already equipped, and I've been working from hotel rooms and airports and home for the better part of the last 5 years. The last month, however, has been fairly interesting because right now we have 100% of our workforce working from outside our offices. Our offices are largely closed, and everybody's logging in remote. Couple of the things that I've noticed is that I think we spend more time than usual working. We're spending more time working, but I think the efficiency of that work has come down a little bit. That's something that I've noticed. But a couple of the other things, me as a user of the fintech space, I've not touched my wallet for 4 weeks now. Everything is online. Even if I walk over to the store around the corner, he's okay with the digital payment. Long term, I actually think the fear of not wanting to touch and avoid physical contact and exchange of currency, etc., is going to do well for the fintech space.
Right, Mr. Xavier. In fact, I would suggest if you want to use the wallet for since really long, you should save money if you're not spending digitally. Great. Mr. Samir, your views, please. How are you dealing in lockdown? What is the biggest lesson that you have learned?
Sure. So few things, Amol. I think
yes.
The first thing, I think all of us have been very surprised with the speed of how things have evolved over the last just few weeks, right? And positively, all of us have adapted very, very quickly to that, to this work from home scenario, right? In fact, I'm finding that, we are working a lot more. We are starting our day a lot earlier. We are finishing a day a lot later as well. But what I found in our teams is the collaboration that people have come together. The second thing that I've seen is the humane approach that we are taking. So for example, in Pine Labs, all of us have contributed a few days of salary to the Prime Minister's Care Fund so that it can go to the needy. The other thing I'd like to point out from a merchant perspective, the retailers that we deal with. Very interestingly, we are also seeing a big shift towards digital. So people or merchants that might not have wanted to make that jump, we actually have a product called ePOS, where you don't need a point of sale machine, but you can download a payment application just onto your smartphone. And we've suddenly seen a very big spike in that, where merchants are going in and downloading and starting to transact digitally. Exactly to what Xavier was saying earlier, people don't want that physical touch. People don't want to, get cash that might be infected. And as a consequence, you're starting to see digital payments starting to even grow further as compared to before.
Right, Sameer. So thank you so much for the opening remarks, gentlemen. So Harshil, I will start, from you and ask you very specifically how you at Razorpay, how you look at FinTechs, scaling up the BFSI ecosystem.
I believe fintechs play a very critical role in scaling up the BFSI system going forward, because like the traditional view of BFSI with just being associated with finance or insurance is not true anymore. Everything is getting bundled with tech. And I think fintech plays the role of the bridge in bringing a lot of older institutions who have been really good at what they do, whether it's running a booking house, whether it's running an insurance platform, or whether it's running any out of BFSI vertical, and bridging that gap with technology to provide that platform through which it can be distributed across the country in a much more cheaper, effective, and efficient fashion. I think that's what we have seen in the last couple of years with advent of a lot of lending fintechs, a lot of broking fintechs, a lot of wealth management fintechs, and all of those coming up. And essentially, most of these are platforms. They basically work with players on one side, bring them onto a tech platform, and provide distribution to them downstream on the consumer side, and provide a cheap and efficient way of distribution to a large population of the country. I think we have just started in that journey. As a country, there's a long way to go. Over time, I think fintechs can play an even deeper role by playing not just a role of distribution, but also, for example, if you come to lending, playing a strong role in helping the underwriting process, helping the collection process, helping in the risk management process, and all the other things. Some fintechs have already started in that genre, but it is still a long way to go in that direction. Coming to Razorpay specifically, for example, we started that journey about a year back when we launched a lending arm, Razorpay Capital, where we don't do the lending. We work with NBFCs on one side. We provide our transaction platform, our data platform to assist those lenders in providing loans to our merchants and SMEs. And we have seen a rapid growth. Like in less than 6 to 8 months, we are doing about 100 to 200 crore loans per month, simply because the platform already had distribution and the NBFCs had balance sheet. We were just able to use tech to bridge that gap, and it provided for a very efficient way of distribution of loans as well as recollections and repayments. I think that was the first start of the journey, but at the same time, we also continue to provide and support a lot of lenders in digitizing their collection process, digitizing their repayment process, digitizing their mandate setup process. So, as I said, we are trying to play our part in driving the digitization, but it's still a long way to go.
Right, Harshil. I will, bring here Anand. And Anand, your view is very important here when Harshil spoke about the payment and the lending part, because you are directly working with the retailers. And considering the today's time and also, overall journey of fintechs, how do you see that fintechs are actually scaling up and boosting the merchants and the retailers ecosystem?
So I grew up, I would say, in a bank like ICICI, where there was liberty to do innovation by tons. And we had coined a theme, we used to say a step before banking, a step after banking. If you really see, it helps you stitch the two sides of your core and helps stabilize the ecosystem much better. And we have taken it too far in our lives with few patents pending in our work and 5 patents already in our work from the past. We have gone deep to the retailing, and as Harshil rightly said, that fintech is tech more than fin. Fin is just one part. You apply it to regulation, you apply it to retailing, you apply it to lending from there, which of course is part of finance. But the amount of work we have been able to deliver to our retail partners, for example, to help them place order from their distributor in our app. Right. For example, help customers to place order to the retailer, and we call it in Hindi, 2 kilo aloo, 1 kilo pyaj, or 1000 rupees ka mutual fund. all the barriers are collapsing actually. Unfortunate, again, I would say that each crisis brings its own outcomes, which are positive, negative, both. And things like, I don't know when will this gentry want to go to an ATM to use it for cash, knowing that I don't know who used it just before me. So there is a disruption in ATM industry, which will be supported by commensurate innovation. You will see that people can order it on the mobile and stand in front of an ATM and scan QR of an ATM, it ejects cash for you. So there will be a lot of good work which will come purely by emerging out of your own role of being a tech or a fintech and collaborating, co-creating with the ecosystem beyond your own area of influence.
Quite interesting, Anand ji. 1 kilo कांदा 1 kilo आलू बटाटा के साथ इनफैक्ट अगर आप हॉटस्टार नेटफ्लिक्स दे रहे हो, आई एम श्योर पीपल विल बी मोर देन हैप्पी to participate in this journey. Sabir, I will bring you here and take the same conversation ahead, because you're talking about merchants and retailers. The cost of merchant is a big issue. The cost of merchant acquisition is a big issue. How do you think the fintechs can take over that? How can fintechs find a solution for that, and ultimately it will give a big relief to BFSI sector as a whole?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, let me give you a few examples as I talk about how to bring the cost down. So we deploy point of sale terminals across India. We've got about 500,000 point of sale terminals in retail stores. What we are finding is that point of sale terminal is actually becoming a device that goes way beyond payments. Okay, so payments was just the starting point. Now we're starting to see that point of sale device, people want to put business applications on there. For example, large FMCG players, they want to put inventory applications on there. And the reason they want to do that is that so that they can very quickly capture what is the inventory that is lying at the retailer and what do they need to push down the chain, versus waiting for the entire distribution chain to give them that level of information. Right? We are finding that when a retailer is selling a mobile phone to a consumer, we actually enable EMI payments from banks right there on the terminal itself. Beyond that, we are finding insurance companies that are saying that, well, if somebody is buying a mobile phone, maybe I can attach insurance to that right away, right? So suddenly we are seeing that this whole ecosystem is being co-created at this point in time.
Very well said. Samir, Saurabh, I will come to you. How do you see, efficiency of fintechs going up to scale up the BFSI sector?
I think, see, the moment I'll also take the example of COVID and pre-COVID and the post-COVID era. COVID has actually brought in the need of the digital transformation for certain organizations. In a way, it has forced the entire transformation to happen. But if you look back and try to understand the pre-COVID era, there were certain inefficiencies or broken processes which used to have a lot of impact on the customer satisfaction. So those are the areas where we are largely focusing upon. I give an example. While you go for buying a term insurance, there's a need for doing the medical test. And with the emergence of COVID, where digital transformations are actually becoming a kind of a need, people are going for telemedicals and looking out for simplified medical grids to issue the policy. Let's talk about the paisabazar.com, where we are talking about lending. And there has been a huge impact on the lending business per se. But the processes like eKYC, the video KYC, these are going to be more important for in the coming world, where people want to stay very contactless. So these process improvements are going to be an opportunity for us as we move forward in the post-COVID era, and we'll continue to involve ourselves to improvise the efficiency of overall processes to raise the customer satisfaction.
Xavier, I want to understand from you, obviously we spoke about the financial innovation, but what kind of pillars that you see, the fintechs and the financial institutions are building to create a next level of innovation?
As far as the technology side goes, what I've realized is that the rate of change in the fintech space has far superseded most other segments in the country. I think the only segment that would be rate of change being faster would probably be the telco market, right? And the telco market has a lot of similarities with the fintech space right now. at this rate of change, the one singular most important thing is to keep going and innovating and to find that one little change that will make customer acquisition easier, or will make payments a little easier, or will make addition of third-party applications a little easier. What are the things that you can do and change to go make something easier for the consumer that is using your app or your service? Now, in that kind of a scenario, one of the things that I've realized, and this is something that a lot of the fintech banking sector and the fintech space has been doing over the last year and a half, I'm going to say, is to start some amount of standardization, to be able to go and make that change when you want to, how you want to, and make it work as efficiently as possible after you've made that change. But the need of the hour today is to have that flexibility, and that's one of the big things that I advocate with everybody, with every one of the fintechs that I speak to, saying that build flexibility while you are conceptualizing what you're going to put together.
Very, very well said, Xavier. So how do you look at that flexibility and improve the productivity?
Yeah, no, as fintechs, as being one of the fintechs, I think one of our strengths is building product and tech. That's our core strength. And our discussions, in most of our discussions with banks and other partners, our major push is always on the fact that we want to integrate and build as much layer of that tech journey as possible. There are challenges with traditional BFSI industry. It's not always easy for them to open up most of those things. And there is a limitation to what all they can open up regulatory wise as well, especially when we work with banks. The idea here is to try to find the best win-win. So I understand certain things are that they can't open up because of regulation, but most of the other things on the front end side are generally openable. The only challenge comes to the fact that is there enough trust between the two organizations to allow for such synergy to happen. And when that happens, for example, we have recently launched Neo Banking Razor Packs. And the way it is structured is that we work with the banking partner who provides the end complete banking infrastructure, including the core banking system. And we have built our tech and product scaffolding on top of it. And it's a win-win combination that allows us to provide end-to-end banking services to our businesses. And when such synergy happens, then we are able to really build revolutionary interfaces. Otherwise, when things are limited to just the last leg, just the last distribution leg, then you can't drive too much innovation. You don't have enough space to play in, and that really restricts the potential of fintechs. So I fundamentally believe that the true innovation in fintech only comes when the tech part is controlled to whatever extent reasonably possible by the fintech, while the fin part is controlled by the traditional BFSI partner.
Okay, thank you, Harshal, for that comment. Anand, your thought process going ahead, considering the changes and the development that has happened in the country now. What do you see going ahead? What will be the thought process of the fintechs now?
In 1765, someone said that all that has to be innovated has been innovated in 1765, and you have seen innovations after that. Right. It will be foolhardy to say that innovation in payment has been done. There is external infusion required to innovate the out-of-box thinking, and thankfully, unfortunately, this was COVID, which had to rejig our minds to innovate. That said, innovation and standardization are cyclic. You will relate to it when you standardize things and you are able to scale to a level, then the normal becomes boring, and then something new has to be done, which means change of standardization. And as we speak, banking over the last 100 of years, many years, has almost become standardized. And there are opportunities to bring openness in the banking, take banking where people go to. And I'm glad that what we have been working on, the neo banking, taking banking to where people are, will show its own element of surprise. So there are two horses which will run, one mind which thinks on the new innovative use cases, and one the tech arms which will go and re-engineer, redesign everything for you. And through a comfortable, controlled minds of the banker friends, we will be able to orchestrate in a controlled environment new things.
Amol, if I may add to that.
Sure, Samir.
See, my view is that while a lot has been accomplished over the last 4 or 5 years, we still have a very long runway ahead of us, right? And if you and particularly in payments, if you look in payments, in the country, still about 80-85% of the payments are still done in cash. When you look at the developed economies, the digital payments are significantly higher than that, right? So for us, getting digital payments to be more pervasive, getting into the rural areas, doing EPOS like I talked about earlier, I think so that's very critical. So we have a long runway to go. But I also think that going forward, the big area that we are going to see innovations in will be coupling payments with other business applications that are going to happen at small merchants. Okay? So, or even large merchants for that matter. So I'll give you a very interesting use case, and we talk about this very fondly in Pine Labs. So see, traffic police, you've seen a very big difference in how they used to charge you and give you a penalty if you cross a traffic light earlier versus now, right? Now they have a point of sale machine and you can pay by credit card or debit card, right? But they've taken the next step now. So now if all of us know what has happened is that if you are crossing a traffic light the second time and it is red, right? So this is your second offense. The police is supposed to charge you more, right? The first offense, they charge you less. Now, how do they get to know at that point that this person has this is the second or third time? So what interestingly, what police have done is they've taken a point of sale machine. They have ported their e-challan app onto that. Now they know, Amol, that you're crossing the red light second time because they're able to pull up their e-challan app. And then they get the right amount that you're supposed to pay that's directly linked into our payment application, and you can pay that, right? Very big difference. So you're starting to see that the merchants, in this case the government or the traffic police, are also starting to digitize around the payment ecosystem. I think that's going to be a very big wave going forward.
Right, Samir, thank you for adding to it. But Saurav, I would like to come here and pick the question or slightly spin it, but the gist of the question is the same. So we have seen the rally of fintechs in 4 or 5 years. We have seen the partnerships that has blossomed. What next from here? What are the key areas that fintechs are looking at now?
I think one of the areas where I do believe in the area where I work is going to be around data and data analytics. That is one area which is going to drive a lot of innovation. Just take an example of insurance. I think now it's a time when the insurance product should be right fit for the customer, and we should be able to profile those customers, come back with innovative solutions which can be very competitively priced for a consumer. So that's an area where we would largely want to venture as we move forward. And as rightly said, that the fin and the tech, right? Fin stays with financial institutions, and tech is something which we can largely work on. That is an area where we are trying to innovatively understand the customer profiles and patterns and come back with the suggestions to the insurance companies to build and develop products which are the right fit for the consumer. And one more process which I see is becoming very prominent now is the medical process, KYC process. These are all becoming contactless processes which we have to focus upon and partnership with the financial institutions to drive value for the consumers. And consumers stays at the center for that. Yeah.
True. I want to just add a little bit over there.
Sure.
And I absolutely echo what Saurabh said. And I explain that to you with an example. So the telco market some time back was trying to see how to increase the per subscriber user rate, right? And that's their primary metric. How do I get more from my existing subscriber base? Now, and we were involved with a lot of that process. And then I got a message one day that said that, by the way, you make so many international calls every month. If you went and took a package, you'd actually save money. Now, I thought about it. My calling international doesn't happen too often, right? It happens in pockets. So maybe it'll happen January and March a lot, but it may not happen every month. And so I said, no, it's not really worth it. It was about 6 months later, they sent me another message saying that this is your average utilization. This is how much you've used. If you had done this package, this is how much you would have saved. And it was only 30 rupees, but it's still, it felt like something that they did that was something that would have been good for me, and therefore I subscribed. Right? Have I used it well? I've not honestly checked, but they have systems to go and tell you, is this better? Is that better? Analytics, and to be able to service a customer and show him what will work better or worse is the next step in the service industry. And that's happening across the board.
So how do you see fintechs are using and leveraging data going ahead?
So we did an analysis with one of the medium-sized banks quite recently. The total amount of data that they are actually using for insight is 8%. And they thought before we did this that they were using all their data. Now, what more can the rest of the data give you, right? What more can it give you? The potential of data is only how much you can go and capitalize on it. That is, it's bottomless, right? The rate of growth of data has had all of us floored, by the way. I've never seen the data grow per month, per week faster than it is growing today. There's a statement that was made by one of the analysts that said that today is the fastest data has ever been growing, and it is the slowest it will grow going forward. It's never going to slow down, right? The question is, how much of that data can you go consume? How much of that can you use? And how much of that can you use intelligently?
How efficiently are you using data at Razorpay?
The challenge for companies is that you don't know what data will you need tomorrow. Like, the data systems are evolving rapidly. A lot of data that was considered useless a couple of years back, now we have models which can evaluate those data and figure out patterns. Tomorrow, you might have some technology which might come up and be able to utilize some alternate source of data. For example, you might say GPS data is pointless for this application, but tomorrow they might be able to come up with a use case that utilizes that GPS data to figure out trends. Now, where that boundary is, you don't know, but when you come up with an application, you don't want to be in a situation where you don't have data, but you have the application now. And that is what people are trying to solve. The reason we talk about banks' data a lot is because banks are mandated to store data. Like, they didn't think that they'll store data because they'll have a data strategy tomorrow. They were mandated to store data, and now they're going back and saying, hey, we have this data. Why not we use that to predict trends? The reason a pizza store or a grocery store is not doing is that because they never thought that this data could be useful. But now every grocery store or even a pizza shop that is coming up thinks that, okay, I need to store the data because I can use that information now to figure out what my customer will buy tomorrow. I think while these trends are already here, you don't know how these trends will evolve over time. And that's why it's become a very difficult exercise to figure out what data is useless. And that's the reason most data scientists take that call that let's just store everything and we'll figure out when a new technology comes which can utilize that data. I think data is an increasingly important resource which will become increasingly important over time as new technologies come in. And we need to all be prepped up for it. At the same time, we need to be mindful about security of customers' data.
Thank you so much, Harshil, for that comment. Saurabh, your comment, what is next that you see? Obviously, we spoke about, how the fintechs can go ahead and scale up, but, anything specifically that you see, to achieve the next level of growth for fintechs?
However, as a company which is trying to run a digital business, data is the food, right? That helps in identifying and making it very constructive for the end consumer who is coming onto your digital platform. So we also as a company believe that each and everything that is necessary to understand the behavioral pattern or the demographic pattern or any conversational pattern that we had with the customer in any form, whether email, SMS or voice, should be stored and should be used for analytics purposes. And that is an area where we are investing a lot of effort in coming up with the right voice analytics, where we want to analyze each and every conversation. So understand our business revolves around a lot of conversations, and that too over the phone. And that becomes the trickiest part of our work, where we analyze the conversation to figure out not only to make better revenues for ourselves, also in the interest of consumers. Because if we speak to the right consumer at the right time by analyzing their patterns, we will end up improvising our customer experience of our consumers, as well as we'll end up having better revenue. So that's an area I would rather keep a larger focus for us for next 6 months, where we'll continue to improvise our customer experience, both from Policybazaar, Paisabazaar, as well as all the financial institutions that we are working with. One of the biggest challenges that we are facing to address that in insurance and lending organization, largely the data fragmentation is slightly higher. As Xavier pointed out, when you go out to start figuring out how much data is being utilized for the exercise, you'll figure out just merely in few percentage. That's just an assumption that our data is everything is in data lake and we are using it. So I do believe if I at all want to basically work with the institutions to do the better in terms of analytics, first step would be to gather the data at one place, ensure the data is being recorded and being utilized for the well of consumers. So that's an area where two areas where we'll be largely focusing upon.
Anand, I have a question for you. Obviously, the future oriented question. But before that, let me ask you a question in two parts. You mentioned about neobanks also some time back, which is the next generation of technology. But before that, tell me something very important on the retailer side. What does it take for you to retain the retailers, merchants? Because that is a key area for you, and you are actually closely working with them. So that is one part of it. And second part of it is obviously, Saurabh also mentioned about the conversational banking. People are using voice, video, and different ways of communication to reach out to the people. So in this regard, what are the technologies that you are going to use, going ahead to attract your customers and to boost your efficiency?
So let me make a statement that we serve the customers who don't tweet, which brings extra responsibility on us, Amol, to the extent that a deprived customer, if not anything, will curse us. And 700 rupee for a poor customer, which is mass India, it used to be the fare of your cab to go for dinner. It may not be anymore the cost going forward, but it brings extra impetus, load, responsibility on us. Now, with that said, we have been building techs which ensure that we automate or eliminate. What I mean is that to scale, you've got to have your shop automated to the hilt, which means that I do auto reconciliations and refund the customers before he realizes that there was a problem. So automate or eliminate. And second is stability before scale. Unfortunately, and I'll admit it, that we had designed ourselves for 2x, 3x for the current volumes or the volumes that we used to do. COVID made us do 4x, 5x, and we crashed 2 days. And thankfully, NPCI stood along. Everyone is well-meaning. Reserve Bank stood along. 20 banks stood along, helping us to do augmentation. Google came out doing our app update in the Play Store in 15 minutes rather than 22 hours. And so did people from Amazon came giving us cloud capability all of a sudden. To be able to retain and work closely with the retailers, we need to keep sweating the network, as we call it, without occupying his shelf space. We need to keep giving him more and more services. And with data application, I read, I know, I understand what the buying behavior of a customer is. I can apply his petrol consumption pattern, and I know for sure he has a bike. If I am able to do that, I can tell my retailer, boy, please sell him a bike insurance. He bought a bike 12 months ago, and I have been seeing consistently there is no debit for insurance. Data can do amazing. It is how responsibly and how far can you apply without intrusion.
Right, Anand. Again, thank you so much for that comprehensive insight. Samir, your view in initial conversation, you mentioned about it's not only the past now, but the people and the companies are building business applications on it, right? So going ahead, what do you see? What are the big changes that you see? When we are moving from here to the next level and scaling up the entire BFSI ecosystem.
Yep. So actually, what I'll do is what I see going forward, everything we're talking about data analytics, that is going to become, or it is already becoming, a very big deal for us, right? So once you have all these business applications that are sitting along with payments, just on payments alone, for example, we do about 700 billion transactions per year. So we have just a ton of data that exists, in the country related to digital payments, credit card, debit card, wallet, UPI, etc. Right? Now think about a retailer or a merchant has a very limited view of the consumer. They only know what that consumer is spending in their particular store. What they don't know is what that consumer is doing across the ecosystem. Where are they spending with other retailers? How much they're spending, etc., right? That is, a ton of treasure of data that we have at the moment. So for our merchants, they find that customer retention, customer loyalty, adding new acquisitions or new customers is a very big source of information that resides with us. Obviously, in the confines of data privacy and what we can and what we cannot do. But we've got tremendous amount of data that will help the merchants going forward in each of these different areas. Acquire new customers, retain customers, give them promotions, right? So for example, you've been going to a particular store and you suddenly drop out, right? But we know that you're going to a competitor. Now can the merchant give you a very specific promotion that will help you come back into that store itself, right? So there are lots of different ways that data can be used. In fact, we're using it internally for our own work as well, right? So you were talking a little bit earlier about how do you engage merchants, how do you make sure that churn doesn't happen. So that is actually a very big I'd say issue for a lot of the fintechs in terms of making sure that merchants that they're bringing on do not churn out, right? And we started to look at data. Ultimately, we figured there was only one metric that was important, and that metric was how many transactions that merchant is doing digitally. And as long as they're doing enough transactions, they will continue to use the point of sale machine. They'll continue to use, right? So what we started to do, we started to create these models that would predict what is happening to the number of digital transactions in a merchant and what is the possibility that merchant will churn out. And then we started to become very proactive in keeping that merchant with us. As a consequence, we saw churn drop by 50%, right? So data is very, very powerful, not only internally, but also for our merchants going forward.
Right, Samir, thanks for that note. And I will take the closing remarks now from Xavier. Again, Xavier, your view here specifically on the technologies. Obviously, we discussed what are the changes that is happening. Most of the fintechs player operating in this space, told what are they going to do. Xavier, if you could tell me your perspective on next generation of technologies, what are you thinking of? What are you, see specifically in BFSI ecosystem, the level of next generation technologies, scale up the fintechs and entire ecosystem going ahead. And also if you could add, how the fintechs, can drive the innovation and how technologies can be an enabler in this journey.
So I'll answer that question in two ways, right? Okay. So first, the market is adapting to a lot of the workload scale that is being demanded by the fintech and the telco and the hyper growth segments, right? And I'll give you a couple of examples. There are NVMe vendors that have put an FPGA embedded on the NVMe that will do compression inline, right? Now, somebody may ask, hey, how does that make a difference? It makes a difference because all your analytics workload, you now can, on that same disk, you can store twice the amount of capacity. There's the key to innovation is to find those 10 things or 5 things that are going to give you that edge against everybody else, right? That's the first piece. The second piece is the ability to stay, and I talked about flexibility. I talked a little bit about openness, but to stay agile in this environment, to be able to do what you need to do when you want to do it, right? Adopt latest technologies, and see, as Dell Technologies, we see this across the world. We've brought many of those technologies into India as far as, I have a Aerospike DB that I want to accelerate. How do I go do that? I have an Elasticsearch that I want to go accelerate. How do I go do that? What are the architectures that work for each of these workloads? We've done a lot of that research backend, right? Now, the key is to find out what these unique technologies are around the world that are giving advantages to various companies wherever they may be, and try and adopt what works for you, right? And that's a discussion that each organization needs to sit down and say, hey, is this going to work long term for me? The other piece, and this comes back to and I think we've been talking about this for a long time. The most common term on that is data is the new oil. So you start storing as much of that oil as possible. Store it, decide what you want to store, and there is going to be that little bit of data that you don't need to store. And I'll give you an example of that. And most of the banks store both the audio recording and the transcripts of a voice call. You don't. If you've transcribed it and you know that it's accurate, why do you need to store the recording as well? Or why do you need to store, if you're mandated to store the recording, why do you need to store the transcription? Because you can transcribe it again whenever you need to. Decide what you want to store, decide how you want to store it, and decide how you're going to monetize it at some point, as much as possible. Monetize as much as possible today, and assume that it is going to get monetized at some point of time or the other. As Dell Technologies, we are across the spectrum. We've seen this done in 100 organizations globally. We have a lot of expertise within the country to go and have a discussion with what will work, what won't work. But the key is to start a conversation and figure out what's going to work for your organization.
Very well said, Xavier, and it was a great learning for me. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you, Harshil. Thank you, Anand, and thank you, Xavier, for sharing your comprehensive insights. I'm sure the audience will enjoy your perspective. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Given the financial impact of coronavirus, I hope you're gaining insights from these sessions on how to grow digitally. But for any other doubt, you can visit our Expo booth to solve any other queries related to your business. In this unprecedented time, you can support each other and grow together. Do have a look at our 10 different booths and talk to our experts to find your solutions.